We're live. Awesome. So, workshop's a bit of a mess, getting ready for going out tomorrow. So first thing I've got to do is put some batteries on charge. Once I've got my batteries on charge, I'm going to worry about what I'm actually going to get done, which is to install a cantilever kit on a truck that someone's given me for me to install it. So, first things first, I need to get my batteries on. And as I probably say every week, I charge my batteries with a balance board just to get them done really quick. And the batteries that I've got have a really high charge rating. So they have a 15C charge rating, which means that if they're not quite balanced and one gets all of the charge, they won't set on fire. Whereas if you have quite a low charge rating like these orange ones, although they're really good batteries, you want to be a bit careful about making sure they're all the same thing. I have done plenty of exercise this week, which is good. So I've got my proper beer for once. This one is a sugar and spice wheat beer because I liked the can, so why not? Cheers. Happy Friday. Okay, that's interesting beer. So, yeah, going to get these batteries on. The crawler that you can see here is the one that I'm going to be driving tomorrow. That's got Proline trenchers on now. I'm absolutely blown away by Proline trenchers for stupid hardcore rock crawling, where you want to go as slow as possible and climb up the craziest things that you can. The trenchers are just this weird tyre where the slower you go, the better they grip. They're also running on my 3D printed inserts. So these foams are 3D printed rubber, which is very strange but works amazingly well. And there's video coming out on that soon. So yeah, if you're happy, say hi in the chat. If not, chill out. And the lights keep flickering, so I don't know how much power I've got, but my phone's charged up, so I'm not too bothered. Yeah, anyway, the cantilever kit that I tried to install on the last live stream really didn't work. It was printed badly. I didn't have the instructions. I didn't know what I was doing. And to be honest, if I did, I didn't have all the spare parts and bearings. So I've made sure I've got everything now. And now I've got everything, I can get it installed. But first, just getting these batteries in the LiPo bag, so if they do set on fire, they just warm me up rather than set me on fire. Right, let's have a quick look. Balance charge, 10 amps across 4 batteries, which are 100 milliamp hour, but 15C charge rate, so that's going to take all of about 20-30 minutes. Right, this is my favourite truck of right now because it's my only running truck right now, but still would be my favourite anyway. But just to show off those 3D printed tyre inserts, I'm not going to bother taking the tyres apart, but you can kind of leave your truck like that and give it a bit of a poke. I mean, yeah, you have to press it quite badly to make it fall over, but if you just give it a few taps, super stiff sidewalls and super soft tyres, which is weird. And also they've gone a bit rounder, which is nice. Everyone seems to be dropping off the live stream, so either YouTube's showing you loads of adverts or you've got sick of the adverts. I've kind of left them on because it means that my reach is bigger. YouTube's showing me to more people, so I know you're seeing adverts. I'm really sorry. The reality is I'm not actually making a lot of money on it. In fact, the money that it costs to run the lights and everything is not even covered by what I'm making off the adverts. But what it is doing is making YouTube show my channel to loads of other people, which is really good. Right, this is one of my 3D printed gearboxes that I need to remember to give to someone tomorrow. So I'm going to put it to the side and probably forget about it. In fact, that is the bag of stuff for him. So that is him sorted. That can go on top of my bag for tomorrow. Right, we have, if you saw the last live stream, we have Liam's truck and bits of Liam's truck everywhere. You know, boxes of them. I think there's a cross member missing, so I do just need to check that. Yeah, and as well, the bolts for the rear portal weren't actually attached. So I might just find some bolts for that right now. But the first thing I'm going to do is take all his wheels off, just to make this a bit easier. And some of my tools are in my bag behind me. And the rest of them are probably in the right place. So, yeah, first one is finding my box spanner. So we're going to get his wheels off because there's quite a few things wrong with Liam's truck. Quite a few things done right. So he's put a bit of brass on, and he's got brass portal covers and then slightly wider hexes, but not insanely wide. But there's still plenty of thread to hold the wheels on. Looks like on the rear he's running really wide hexes as well. I'm going to give him a tip to say run slightly thinner hexes on the rear, or less wide. Mostly because the truck that he's actually copying, which is the Toyota LC70, that's how they are. They are wider at the front than at the rear. But also he's got a brass hex on here, and if he just went back to the standard ones, it would just change the weight distribution a bit, which will offset the giant hard body that he's got on it. So hopefully this wheel will come off. This is the one with the dodgy portal housing. It's getting a bit warm in here quickly, and I haven't got any heaters on either, so that's interesting. Right. So I'm going to get my drivers out this giant bag that's got all the cantilever kit in, and we're just going to do up some of the bolts that he hasn't actually done up. So let's make that happen. Great. And fortunately I have spare hardware for his portals, so we'll get those done as well. Oh, he's filled these things full of grease. Filled those full of grease. Yeah, let's just make sure that's all together. Let's just check that they're all connected. Right, if you've got any questions, chuck them in the comments, in the chat, and I'll try and answer them. I do need to check and see why people are sort of, the viewer count is going up and down. Either I'm being incredibly boring, or, which is absolutely possible, or the adverts are just putting everyone off. If you can't stand the adverts, just let me know and I'll just turn them off. But it was helping me grow the channel a little bit, so I don't really care either way. I'm not going to make my fortune out of YouTube views, especially not doing technical videos about a really small subsection of a niche hobby. And I haven't got the patience, like RC Review, to buy loads of crawlers and test them all out and borrow them from people and everything else. Right, so once I've managed to get his portal back together, which I've done 6 of the 8 bolts, thanks Traxxas, I will then take his suspension off, because that's going to get overhauled. And then we'll install this cantilever kit, which will happen very, very, very shortly. And I'll also change the camera angle so that you can actually see what I'm doing rather than just me talking about what I'm doing, which is one of the things that you forget about on live streams. So here we go. Right, let's have a look at the truck. Ta-da! So this truck's looking a little bit sorry for itself because it's in lots of bits. One of the first things that he's got wrong is this servo location. So I'm going to get these shocks off and just chuck them in a box. Because I'm going to have to change the servo location. So the cross member for the servo is in the wrong way round. Excuse me, the servo itself is in the wrong way round. The shocks appear to be mismatched. And all in all, this truck just needs a bit of love. Yeah, so the spring on one side is a softer spring than the spring on the other, because one is the green and one is just a standard Defender style spring. Right, so that's the springs off. There's some bolts either side of that cross member to get the servo to work, so I'll just get those off now. And this cross member has a cutout here that should actually be here, so it's not against the motor. So I'm just going to flip that round, which will also fix his steering, because he said he was having steering problems, probably because it's just not in right. But that also means I have to dig out my other driver, so just be a moment. Right. What else am I going to have to loosen off? Just going to have to loosen off the rails slightly. Just so I can slide that cross member out. That is wedged in. That is really wedged in. Right, let's get that sorted. I'm going to assume he's either knocked this together in a rush quickly to get it over to me for fixing, or his front bumper off. Not only is there a bumper, there's just all kinds. Right, so that's just popped off. Let's just this over, because it's all looking a bit sorry for itself. Yeah, so on this cross member, the reason why I can tell it's in the wrong way round is because there's two notches. If I can get this out, might have to loosen it off a bit more. There we go. There's two notches on the servo cross member that should match up with the notches in the chassis, and they just don't. So that's getting flipped around, and then that should also solve his steering issues, because the servo's just in the wrong way round. So the servo horn's on the wrong side of the truck and everything else. I'm just struggling to pull his rails wide enough, just because I'm being careful rather than being weak, although it's making me feel weak. There we go. Right. So the biggest problem that he had, apart from his rear suspension not being attached, is that was the wrong way round. So now is... Oh, where's the camera? I don't know why I've just knocked off there, but probably was expensive. His servo was the wrong way round, which meant that the servo horn was pointing the wrong way round, and then just everything just wasn't right. His servo was on top of his motor and all sorts. So I'm going to try and squeeze that back in. Obviously whoever's done this has just like muscled it in, so I'll try and do the same, although I did go BMXing last night, so my forearms feel like they've been shredded, which indeed they have. Right, I'm just going to loosen this off on the chassis, so you won't be able to see this, but it's just where it attaches to the skid, just undoing that a little bit. And that just allows the whole thing to flex slightly. Right, there we go. Servo in properly, bit of space with the motor. Servo horns on backwards, but we can sort that out in a moment. Let's get this chassis back together. check my chat's working. Oh yeah. Oh, someone. Oh, right, yeah. Hey, Miguel. Yeah, the chat wasn't showing, but yeah, if you're out to control the dinner pot, that is super, super important. Right, so servo's on the right way round now. Now we want to pop the shock towers back on, and I've chucked one of them away. There we go. No? That's interesting. So I've just fallen off the other side. Who knows? Who knows? Somehow I've lost a shock tower already. Oh, yeah, it has. It's just fallen off this side. Right. That's the panhard side, so that's hard to mess up. Good. So I'm going to pop this back on. Oh, yeah. Hey, right. Hey, I can actually scroll back into the chat now. I can see. Hey, Bulgir RC. Amazing. Right, great. I can actually see chat. That's good. So I just need to squeeze this into the right position to get the notches to all line up and everything else, which it's just about doing. There we go. Right, and now I've got his servo mount on the right way around, although I haven't put on the other side. Then I can flip his servo horn round, and that should solve 99% of his steering issues. And then tomorrow, if he actually got my messenger message about the fact that we're going to Little Arms Cliff, everyone is welcome. Little Arms Cliff in Harrogate, just down the road from the main Stainburn car park at 9 o'clock in the morning. Obviously there's a limit of 30 people, but seeing as there's 7 people on this live stream, it's probably not going to be overrun by people crawling. It is just a rock in the middle of nowhere with lots of smaller rocks in the field, that if you drove every single line that you could drive, you would be there for at least 10 hours because there are just lines after lines after lines. I spent about 7 hours there last weekend, got sunburnt, and only did about a third of the lines that I know are there, because you do them one way, you do them the other way, you do them again, you try something else. It's just so much fun, and everything's about, at best, 10 foot high. So you can still smash a truck up if you're silly like me, but if you're mostly sensible and stood next to your truck, there's little to no chance that you'll break your truck. It's only if you do some of the silly challenges. Right, so the servo cross member is now pointing the right way, so our motor's no longer touching it. Hey Dan in the chat. What I'm going to do now is flip his servo horn over. To be honest, it's a bit hard to work out where centre is, so I'm going to have to show you all a little trick. I'm also going to have to tell him he's got the wrong servo horn on for a TRX, but I don't have any spare ones, so I can't help him out there. So there's a little trick to doing servo horns, which isn't, you know, what I'm doing now. That's just me using the wrong tool for the job. I'm just going to loosen off his servo horn, but most servos have a hard stop at the end of the travel, so you can actually work out what the halfway point is. Oh wow, everything on here is either rounded or not attached, so that's going to be fun. Right, to be able to sort out his oh yeah, no, actually I've taken the things out, so I should be able to undo that, and that will give me a bit of articulation. I can get the MIP driver in there and that should sort it all out. Yeah, so with a servo, most of them will turn a finite amount because they have a hard stop. So you can just turn them, work out what the max is in each direction, and then just estimate what middle is. So I'm just flipping his servo horn round now. So I'm just going to try and work out what the max is. And the way that I generally do it is take out the rounded bolt that he's got in his servo and pop that back into where you would put your servo horn. And then turn the servo round and try and guess where halfway is. But we'll see. Can always just tidy it up in the morning if he comes out crawling. I hope he does, because the body that is painted looks amazing and would make some good YouTube content. Even if he did paint the Toyota bit wrong on the end of it. So if you're watching, Liam, you be careful with your paint, because you did a great job and then you got the last bit a little bit wonky. Right. Yeah, skills, driving and filming. There are ways to cheat. So one of the ways that you can cheat is to obviously mount your camera to the front. Another way to cheat is don't film with your phone and use a GoPro, or I thought mine was in my bag, or an Insta360 camera. And a lot of these cameras in their software, when you're stitching the software together, have a horizon leveling feature where they can work out where the horizon is, because then you can just sort of film at a wonky angle and it'll rotate the camera, or it'll rotate it in software, which is quite cool. But yeah, for many, oh yeah, or just use a tripod and then you won't have that issue. It's a very good idea. But yeah, for a long time I used my phone and had to keep the controller quite straight and rigid. Right, this is one of those. Awesome. This is one of those servos that is a winch servo that can be programmed to be a normal servo. So I won't know until I turn it on which direction it needs to point. So with that in mind, I'm not really sure, without stealing a receiver from somewhere, how I can fix that for him. And I think I can, because if I can pull my receiver out of here, yep, got it. Afternoon from Canada, amazing. Yeah, I finished work, which is why there's a beer hanging around, and put the kids to bed and have my dinner and everything else. But yeah, cool. Right, I've just pulled the receiver off my truck, so I'm just going to plug it in and basically fire up his servo. And just get the servo on straight, and then we'll do the cantilever kit, which is all in a big bag next to me. Now, given the state of this truck, I'm not sure I want to open this receiver box, but it is what it is. Right, need that on, need a battery. Oh, and my ESC doesn't have anything, and the battery that I've picked up is a Dean's, not an XT60. We'll get there. I will get there. Have I got an adapter? I probably have. I have a feeling this truck is going to be full of horrors, so it's just going to be one thing after another. Not because Liam's done anything wrong, just because he's bought it off someone who's a bit ropey, obviously. Just need to find my adapters, which That's disappointing, which I don't have. So I'll just use one of these batteries, because these are all XT60s. So we want the channel 2, channel 1, plug those into my receiver. And we'll get there. Oh, and he's got the type of servo that doesn't fit into my receiver very easily. This just gets harder and harder, this does. Never mind. Right. We'll just put his servo horn on and just hope for the best tomorrow. I best make sure I put this back in the right order. So that would be steering. That would be throttle. Signal is the red, yellow wire. So there we go. Right, I'll cross the bridge about his servo horn when I need to. For now, I'll just leave it dangling because that's not the most important thing. We've got to do a cantilever kit and do some suspension bleeding and a variety of other things. So let's crack on with that. Right, I had a box for all the bits that I'm taking off his truck, which will take, pop those screws back on. So this cantilever kit is one that I printed off Thingiverse, which I keep calling Thingverse, but I found out recently it's Thingiverse. And you can find it for yourself by just Googling trx4 cantilever kit Thingiverse, because that's what I did. Now the cantilever kit's in this bag here, and just going to be careful taking stuff out of here because my camera's in here. So the cantilever kit is this mess. Somewhere. Plus miscellaneous bolts and everything else. So we've got GoPro clips and interchangeable lenses and things, and bearings from building gearboxes and all the rest of it. Right. Bolts. Don't need bolts yet. Right. Oh. That is the Thingiverse cantilever kit. And the way this works is you've got these mounts that go onto your truck. You've then got these that I couldn't work out last time, but I have since read the instructions. And these are the cantilever arms, which you a bit like this, and I will need to find a spacer. And the way these work is your shock goes into one part of it. You've got a bearing in the top, and then you've got a small link that goes to your truck, and then your shock's mounted lengthwise. So the first things I'm going to install are these little mounts that hold the suspension on the end. But before I do that, I've got some bearings from Mossy RC, or Scorcher RC as his business I think is called, which is Martin, who I'm going to meet again on the rocks tomorrow, and that's always a good laugh. He's given me some bearings that are marginally undersized compared to the ones that the Thingiverse link said. Thingiverse said you need 8x3x4. 8x3x4 is an absolute nightmare to get hold of, so I'm going to use 8x3x3 and some washers. And because I'm really good at 3D printing now, those have just slipped straight in snugly, so they won't just come straight out again. But without me having to get the old vise out and squash them all in, although this one does feel like there's a little blob, so I should just be able to squash it flat with pliers and then push it in with my thumb, or I'll just squeeze it with the bolt. There we go. So yeah, those bearings have gone in nice and snugly. I am going to try and use the longer leverage ones because I do know that the springs we're running are quite stiff springs, so I don't know what kind of feel Liam wants on his truck. And it is 4 bearings per set of arm. I think Martin sent me 10 bearings because he's amazing, so I should have spares. So I've now learnt my lesson to brag about 3D printing on a live stream, because the rest of them I've not cleared the blobs out or anything. PETG I print without any fan, or very minimal fan if I'm printing it quickly. So I can print it slowly with no fan, with no stringing or blobbing, or I can print it quickly with a fan, and then I get the odd little zit and blob that just stops things from sliding together, which isn't the end of the world. Just means you have to squash a few bits together because the blobs just snap off. But it's really nice to have PETG that prints quickly but still has the strength of if it was printed slowly. I've not bothered cleaning the rough edge off the back of these, so I'm just I mean, really, I'm just yellowing it, but given that the servo mount was on backwards and the portal wasn't attached, and I can see that the brass portal covers don't have all the bolts that they need, I probably can't make this truck much sadder than it already seems to feel, but I can certainly try and make it feel a little bit more springy. And especially for Liam, who hasn't been out for a long time and has had a lot going on, it'll be really nice to give him something that he can go and play with. And I've forgotten the name of his dog, but his dog was really ill, and I hope she's made a good recovery as well, because she's had a bit of a rough time as well. Right. Now I can check the chat. Yes, so the steering wheel centre when I turn it on, however, Liam didn't actually give me the transmitter, so I can turn it on, but it, oh yeah, no, it should just centre when I turn it on. Great idea. I'll do that in a minute, because as you can tell, my brain's a little bit fried today. It's been a busy day at work. So I'm just going to get these last few bolts into the portal cover, because driving around with brass portal covers that only have 4 of the 8 bolts that they need is just asking for the teeth to get a bit chewed up. But it's not a problem, because I've got loads of bolts that have kind of stripped a little bit when I've used them on wheels, but screwing into plastic, they go in perfectly, so that's great. Right, let's build some cantilever setup. So these go on this way. You've then got these little ones that go on the back, and then you have this stuff which is doing the cantilever. So you've got a shock running along there, I think, and then this is going up and down and doing its thing. I just need to kind of work out the right length of the arms as well, and the right side of the arms, and a few other bits. So where are we at? Right, this is the right one, so that will go on there with its bearing. The shock will run across the yeah, it goes on there. So the shock will run across the top to this arm, and then this will move up and down, and then this bit will have a little link that goes onto here that makes that work. So we need to get this bolted on first. Fortunately for Liam, I have got bags of spare bolts. Now, I didn't actually test this, but I'm just going to see if I can bolt these out that way. No, I'll do it with lock nuts. It's missing the member that I would normally bolt them into. So normally there's a cross member here on a TRX. Now he could put that on, but then it'll screw up the Toyota body that he's trying to put on. So what I'm going to try and do is put 3 of these on. And then just use little bolts that I've got in a box somewhere to try and just hold it in place. So let's see how far we can get. And then we'll build up the cantilever links, and then we'll build up the links for one side. Then I'll do the other side. Then I'll take someone's advice, because I'll have charged up batteries, and just turn the whole thing on and hope that it centers. Right, that's those, and that's the box driver I need. Here goes. Right, so that fits onto that. As you can hear, I've made a bit of a mess of that. Oh, my batteries are ready. I'll just get this one done first. Sorry for sticking a driver in your face. Great. Right, I don't know what other YouTube channels people watch. Well, actually, I do know some of the YouTube channels that you watch, but I've been watching a lot of Lockpicking Lawyer recently, and he did an excellent collaboration with Stuff Made Here, or Stuff Made Somewhere. Anyway, I think he was an ex-NASA engineer or something, which was an unpickable lock, and that was really cool, but it's given me an idea for some of the formats of the videos that I do. Not the live streams though. I will never be as slick or cool as, say, Scale Builders Guild or Harley, because they've just been doing it for too long and they know how to do it properly. Right. So we've got our first mount on. Then we're going to take one of these little mounts that has an attachment for the shock to go onto, but it also has this little hole to attach it in. We're going to pop that back on. Or at least hope that pops back on. There we go. Cool, right. So now we've got our attachment points, we can do the rest of this. And I hope these live streams are showing that I'm not the most professional one. Yeah, I would love to be as big as those guys. That would be awesome. So thank you very much. Yeah, now I need to work out this cantilever bit. So what I do know is that we've got these two pieces, and if I get the right side, I think that's the right side for here. I'm going to have to pop some shims in, as I said before, because those shims are going to just stop, well, the bearing's kind of sunk in, so I need something to attach to stop the bearing from sticking. So I think, oh, excuse me, I think I'm just going to use some washers rather than shims, because it doesn't have to be anything special, because it's not a set thickness. I only use shims when I need to shim to a particular thickness. But before I do that, I'm just going to grab my spacers and try and find a 10mm spacer that will fit between this, which it probably won't, but I was hoping it would. Oh, that sucks. Right, we'll just make it up as we go along. Right, so we've got these spacers that hold these plates apart. So I now need to find a bolt that's long enough to go between all of that, which I think was those black ones I've got here. These are 16mm bolts, so they should. Nope, they're not long enough. So these are 24-ish, and yeah, that should go through. So I'm going to run that bolt all the way through. I'm just going to make sure I compress that bearing in first. And when you're pressing in bearings, just push on the, you can see the outer race. Just get some pliers and just push on the outer race. Push on the inner race, just don't press on the seal, because most of the time they'll just pop in and it'll be fine. If you're putting a lot of pressure on there, just expect to have one or two little challenges. What I'm actually thinking is I might just use a nylon spacer instead of the one that's in the kit, because it will just sit better. Yeah, that'll sit much better. Right. So this is the first part of our cantilever puzzle. We've got a nylon spacer, 2 bearings, and then enough washers that when I tighten this down, so it's probably about three washers, because the bearing, as I said, is an undersized bearing, so I just need the washers. That is going to just screw into there. Great. Hopefully, if I get this in the right place. Right, so just cranking up the torque. Yeah, that's going to work. Right, so what's going to happen is we have a shock in there and a shock there, and that's our cantilever kit, and that's going to provide upwards force. But I'm also wondering if I've put that on the right way round, that might actually want to be that way round. In fact, what I'm going to do is check on one of the phones that I have, that I think I turned off properly last time, so it should have some battery. Yes, that's turning on now, because no, I was right the first time around. Yeah, so it does. Yeah, it does sit that way. Okay, so that's how our cantilever works. So that's going that way, and then we have a link that's going up and down. So that's going to be cool. So yeah, first things first, let's find a bolt to attach that. That has to be quite a long bolt again. That has to be a bolt that can go all the way through the shock, and preferably into the mount, so that might not be long enough. So I've got another box of bolts hiding away. Got some M325s. And yeah, that's going to go all the way through and capture it in. But before we do that, I've just realised we need to do some shock oil, which I've put to one side. So I'm just going to reach out and grab that, and I'm going to do all of these shocks. I've just dropped something on the floor. Hopefully nothing important. Yeah, okay. That'll do for now. Right, shock bleeding. Let's do shock bleeding the super fast, don't stress yourself way. Now, I do know that Liam is going to be running a very heavy body. He's going to be running a very heavy body, so I'm going to run it with some 40 weight, and he can always change his shocks in the future. So this will be funny, because given how the rest of the truck has been looked after, let's see if there's actually any oil in these shocks. So I'm just using my screw extractor pliers to hold on to the shock body. Some people will scream at me for the threads, but it won't be the end of the world. Just checking the chat. Where are we at? So that's just loosening off the top, because whoever's done these has done them super tight. And then let's have a look at the shock oil that's in these. That is not too bad. So they've used a good quality shock oil, but yeah, they've been built a little bit strange. So hopefully this has a cap. Yep. So this is a fresh bottle of 48 shock oil. And I'm being really horrible about this truck. I'm not trying to be horrible about this truck. It's just I wanted to drink a beer and have an easy life, and I can see it's going to make my night quite interesting. So yeah, please don't worry about me bagging on this truck. I'm really glad to be in a position where I can just spend my evenings messing about with tiny trucks. That's a fantastic thing. So on a previous live stream, yeah, so that shock had about a quarter, and it's the super thin Traxxas stuff. And these have been done up super tight, tighter than you probably need to, because if you do them up too tight, you actually compress the O-rings and then they leak. Yeah, and then this one as well has about a quarter of the oil that you need in a shock. Now, remember that when I opened up the first shock, it had that bluish oil in. That was a shock with a green spring. So I'm hoping this shock with a green spring has the same colour shock oil in. Otherwise, we had a completely mismatched set. Yeah, it looks like it's got that blue stuff in. Now, what I thought was colour shock oil actually isn't. It's Traxxas shock oil with a load of gunge in it. So what I'm going to do is pull up the spring so I can just check. Yeah, the seals are on fine, so these will be fine. Right, let's fill them up. Shocks. People get far... In fact, I need my face here for this one. People get far too obsessed and far too wound up about how to do shocks. There's actually some dead simple tricks. The first thing is, don't overthink it. Traxxas shocks, rather than the Proline big bores, Traxxas shocks, axial shocks, a lot of them are what's called an emulsion shock. And so they actually are designed to operate with a little bit of air in them, because the air makes the shock fluid turn into a bit of an emulsion, you know, with the air, and that slightly changes the property of it, which allows the valving to work properly. So if you bleed a shock and you get a little bit of air in it, it really doesn't matter, because that's how it's intended to work. So don't stress about getting all the bubbles out. If you manage to get all the air out, all that will happen is your shock will be slightly stiffer for the first few runs, and the piston will not quite have enough space to go, and when it fully compresses, it will somehow leak the oil out somewhere. So it's actually better just to leave a tiny gap with a little bit of air in, because then you're not putting so much pressure in the shock, and you are actually using the oil correctly. So the way that I fill them is really easy. I get my shock oil, I fill it up to the top, or thereabouts. I then cycle the piston a little bit to get any air bubbles that are underneath that piston, because the oil will drip down underneath the piston, but it will take a long time. So you just cycle the piston and you'll start to see some air bubbles popping up and down. And then the trick is you fill it right to the top, to the point that it's about to dribble out the top. I know Traxxas tell you not to do this. Then I need to adjust my camera. So we've got a shock completely full of oil. And you don't have to go mad, just to the top of that aluminium bit. Grab one of your tops, push the shock all the way down. Let the shock fluid just leak out the top. Let any bubbles just come to the top. This has got a few bubbles in it. They'll rise to the top. They'll give me that space. And then take the cap, plonk it right in the middle of that shock fluid, and just press down really slowly. And you'll get shock fluid all on your finger. Turn it about half a turn, and then just push on the top to make sure that the whole shock is pushed down. And then just slowly wind that cap in. Just needs to be as slow as possible, preferably not on a live stream while you're having a beer and then realizing you should have left the garage door open because it's getting a bit warm in here. But you just screw it in slowly, and what's happening is by screwing it in slowly, the cap is displacing any fluid that doesn't fit. But because you've got the shock compressed, it's making sure it all fits. Then, in my case, because I can't quite get grip on because I should have taken these springs off, but because these aren't the kind of standard spring holders, and then push it down and just tighten it up fully. And that's it. And if you find you can't tighten it up fully, just back it off about halfway, push it down, let the rest of the fluid come out, just wait. So you've got your shock pushed down, tighten it up, then take a hex driver and just give it a quarter turn, an eighth to a quarter of a turn, and that'll just give you enough pressure. And now I've got a shock that's slightly air locking. What I'm going to do is leave that stood up and then come back to it, because what's happening is I've put too much oil in it, but I've done that on purpose, because what happens is if you fill it up the Traxxas way, which I'll just do now, just getting the bubbles out. The Traxxas fill level is actually just where the screw thread is. You fill it up to there. If you fill it up that way, it's 50-50 as to whether you'll get a bit of an airlock, and then you end up fiddling around. Whereas this way, you waste a few mil of fluid, but you get a more consistent shock. Right, so my shock's fully compressed. Popping this in, that's displacing the fluid. And essentially the reason why you end up with that bit that won't compress is because as the cap's gone in, it's displaced fluid and filled itself up. But I'm going to show you a trick for that in a minute. So I'm just going to do these ones so that we're all filled. And because this is going to be a cantilever kit, the stiffer springs are going to be on the rear, because the cantilever has leverage over everything. Now, I'm glad I've remembered to bring my little vise down, because I'm going to have to cut some metal rod in a minute. So what's happening here is, as I'm winding up my shock cap, it's compressing, or it's trying to compress the fluid, and that's stopping the shock from fully compressing. But I'm just leaving them to rest, because there's a little trick to sorting that out. But yeah, don't stress about shocks too much. You only need to get somewhere near 90% of the fluid in there that you think is the full fill. The rest of it is just nice to have. They will turn into an emulsion and then just carry on working anyway. Right, so as I do that, yeah, it's just pushing it open. Right, so I'll go back to my first ones, which were this pair. So these are what are called hydro-locked, so the shock isn't fully compressing. The trick to dealing with that is to open up your shock. About half to a full turn, and then just cycling the shock up and down, and then when you close it off, you have full travel. That's all it was. So there was a bit too much fluid in there, so I just loosened off the cap, cycled it up and down, and all the fluid that's excess spits out of this seal at the top, and that's one finished shock. And I'm just going to do these other three, and then we'll carry on with this cantilever kit. But I needed to do the shocks first, because once they're on there, I don't want to take them off and then bleed them, because it's going to be one of those awkward jobs. Right. Okay, great. So that's another one. Nice and tight on the seal. Oh, not quite all the way there. I'd move on to the next one. The reason why I leave them between the two is just to let the pressure equalise. Check them all. That one's all the way down. The rest are just being a bit finicky, as is the challenge with shocks. So again, just undoing this top, driving them all the way down. I can see that little bit of fluid's burped out. And the final tighten up is where you push the shock all the way down. And then you can see that shock now compresses all the way, and it's got 40 weight oil in. You can hear when it first gets started, there's a little bit of a like sound, but that's just the emulsion getting created, and then they go smooth. So yeah, don't have to worry about shocks. They're not the most complicated thing. It's just a case of don't underfill, and if you do overfill, or if you deliberately overfill like me, just burp out that extra fluid and carry on with your day. Because in the grand scheme of things, that extra fluid that we've spat out is a couple of mil. Right, this one's not having it. So the reason why you only undo the cap a couple of, like a turn at best, is because the cap is displacing the fluid. Right. Oh, that is a rear one. I need to get that one right. So if you only undo it 1/2 mil, the cap's still displacing the fluid enough, but the excess can dribble out. Yeah, that's worked, right. There we go. So that shock now goes all the way. Something, oh, got it right, something more capable. What would I recommend? I would, if you're happy to build your own crawlers, I'd recommend a trx4 Sport, and then from there you can turn it into a G-Spade or a Northwest Scalar Designs or any of the other kind of types of comp crawler. I wouldn't get a 10.3 because there's just been too many people with too many issues to get a 10.3, and there's been issues with the axles, issues with the gearbox. They're heavy, they're very heavy. Dig unit's nice, but that's about the only saving grace. But yeah, or even, you know, if you don't have a lot of money, or you don't want to spend a lot of money because you're not sure, although you do have a Gallander wagon, the RC 4-wheel drive Galand, then the SCX 10.2 kit is a good option, because the 10.2 is a platform that you can actually give a bit of stick and it's absolutely fine. But yeah, 10.2 is a nice sort of super light option, very good at crawling. If you want a trail truck that you can go anywhere, and 9 times out of 10, as long as you haven't messed with it, it will drive out, is a trx4. And if you like the kit, buy a kit, but if you want an RTR, just buy the RTR. But yeah, my trx4s never broke until I started modifying them. And that, well, yeah, that's not the best advert for modifying things or this channel, but hey ho. Right, so I'm just going to pick the green shock with the best suspension, so that's this one, and we're going to mount it this way. Yeah, so in terms of crawlers that have got really good aftermarket sort of comp parts support, the SCX 10.2, definitely, they get turned into comp crawlers all the time. And then, as you've seen on this channel, the TRX4 has all of the Northwest Scalar Designs, the brazing scale, you know, quite a lot of support now for making them a bit more competitive in the sort of comp scene. Right. This is not wanting to screw in, so let's just try and get this to work. Oh, it's this mount, right. Okay. Okay, right. That is as close as it will go to bolting in. We're going to well, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this because I put the wrong version on, so that's a mistake I'll learn. Put the wrong plate on, so the wrong back plate. So I'll just swap that over. There we go. It needs the back plate with these kind of nodules on, because that's what the screws bolt into when you're doing the suspension up. Fortunately, one of the washers has stayed in place, so that makes it easier for me to get this part back on. And also it needs an extra washer, so I'm going to put a longer bolt on that as well. I'm not happy with the length of that bolt. Ah, actually, yes, it's It's going to need a shim because the washers are so big they're stopping the bearing from operating correctly. So I need my bolts. Going to pop a nice long bolt in this so it works better, and I'm also going to reach out for my shims that I put somewhere. Yeah. So I'm going to use the shim to lift the washer off the bearing. I hope. There might be, the shims might be a bit too big. No, that's going to work. Yeah, okay. It's hard working out these kits when they have minimal instructions. In fact, I'm not going to use a shim because its surface area is too big. What I'm going to use is a spring washer, because the spring washer seems to fit on the bearing better, and then that means I only need 2 washers, and that should attach better. Right, yeah, that's cool. So that arm's now mounted. It's in reasonably tight. I'm not going to do it ridiculously tight. Yeah, it's tight enough. We're going to pop this suspension on it, or strut in, I guess. Yeah, I guess it is a strut. And then again, just find another bolt, which is in this case a 20mm bolt, and whiz that in, and that's going to go through and capture the suspension shock. That's what it is. It's a shock, not strut, because a shock is a combination of a strut and a coil. That's going to need a bit more torque. Okay, cool, right. That has gone in there. So now, there we go. We are 1/4 of the way. So we have a shock, which is on a big arm. And now we need to make need to make a complete mess over there. What we need to do is make a link to make this work. So I'm going to get my jeweler's vice, just bob it on the table. Now normally I would use a Dremel to cut things, but I don't want to make that amount of mess. What I do know is that the link length is supposed to be, find some old rod ends. The link length is supposed to be 30mm in total, eye to eye. So I'm just pulling some old Traxxas rod ends out of my used rod ends box, because I've not been supplied with any, but it won't matter too much if this wobbles because of the cantilever effect. I'm going to use, yeah, slightly long ones, they'll be fine. And then I've got some metal rod somewhere, probably left over, hopefully. Let's have a look. No. Ooh. At least I hope I've got some metal rod left over from somewhere. Let's just check a box. Right. Traxxas rod ends fit on M4 metal rod. So if I take my rod end and measure it up against my rod, now the rod goes to about the end of the screw. There's like a nut-shaped bit on a Traxxas. That's how deep they can go in. So I'm going to measure this up scientifically with a ruler, and basically put the two rod ends next to each other and then measure 30mm eye to eye. Are they the short ones? Well, the instructions must be wrong because they are 40mm eye to eye minimum length. So let's see. What do I need to do? This needs to be on the Wi-Fi. It's on the Wi-Fi, great. So Thingiverse trx4 cantilever kit. So this cantilever suspension set was by Build It One. I'm just going to read the instructions. Lower links will be required. I made mine 37mm eye to eye. There we go. I don't know how they managed that, but we shall soon find out. Yeah, so I'm going to grab a Sharpie, hopefully, if I can see it. Everywhere is a bit of a mess. No, can't see me Sharpie. So I'm just going to measure off 20mm. And on that 20mm, so essentially we're going to measure off 20mm, cut it with a hacksaw. In fact, I'll do it slightly shorter. It's about 17mm. Hacksaw's not playing ball. Yeah, that's close enough. Right. I'm not having much luck with this vise today. Right, let's try again. Right, sod it, let's Dremel it. Oh, and my cutting disc's broken. I should have really prepared for this much better. I do apologise if you sat there going, what is this idiot doing? Just going to use a cut-off wheel, chop off a small amount of rod twice over to make my links. So this isn't a real Dremel, but they are real Dremel cutting discs. So that's how you can save yourself a few $100, is don't bother buying the Dremel tool because the other ones are just as good. I'm sure people will argue with that, but that's my experience. And yeah, buy the Dremel cutting discs because they're super cheap. And then you get all of the great quality of the Dremel cutting disc at a fraction of the Dremel tool price. So I just pop the cutting disc on. My batteries are charged, so I can unplug my charger. Got my glasses on. I'm going to hold my breath and try not to set anything on fire. Right. That's one link that is red hot. I'll pop that on the stainless steel rule and then I'll do the next. Right, that's two. And that one's red hot as well. So we'll just let that chill out a bit. Because I've made that mistake before on a live stream of cut something off and then pick it up straight away. All I can say is that hurts. It really hurts. And I would not recommend it. Right. What I can recommend is Sugar and Spice Beer by McColl's Brewery. It's a little bit odd, but, you know, it's different. Right, that's not hot enough to burn my fingers, so just basically going to screw these two together. Oh, I missed the chat because I was busy doing things. Can you fit the servos to the TRX Sport for locking the diffs? Yes. Yeah, if you want the unlocking diffs, buy one of the RTRs and just convert the body back to a sport style body. Okay, they have gone together a bit too easy, so I've probably not done these the right length. Yeah, I think that's not the right length, so I'll just cut off a bit longer. And I might just industrial grade super glue part of this as well. Because hey ho, why not? Yeah, that one's nowhere near long enough. Right, what's chat saying? Element make a good truck. Element. People have varying opinions on this. Some people think that the transmission is at the wrong angle and the pinion gears are at the wrong angle. Looking at it myself, they're all right trucks, but I probably would go for an SCX with an overdrive diff because it's just got better aftermarket support and better steering. But yeah, you can't go wrong with the Element. The HPIs, they can be a bit ropey, but it's all personal preference. I think I had some super glue somewhere. There we go. Right. If you can't be bothered to be really careful with cutting your metal for your rod ends, I can highly recommend getting some industrial strength super glue which isn't that much more expensive than normal super glue, and then just dropping it on the rod ends as you screw them together, and it's highly unlikely that they will pull apart, because Loctite isn't really a thing on plastics. So industrial strength super glue, and especially in this case where I'm actually screwing the whole thing into one unit, that super glue's already stuck my finger to it. That's going to stick those together. So they're the links that we're making, and there is a rod in there. There's also now a load of super glue in there, and a small amount of my skin. And again, doing the same on these. These are old rod ends that have been taken off other projects, but they will do the job because these links are up and down only, usually under compression. There's not a lot of tension on these, and they'll be fine. Mechanically, absolutely fine. Yeah, I've covered my fingers in super glue, so I'll show you all a little trick. You can do one of a few things to get super glue off your fingers. You can just get your Dremel or your hacksaw and just cut your fingers off, and that will get rid of the super glue. Or you can get a scalpel and drag the super glue off, or get some super glue remover. Now this says harmful to your skin, but what I've found is it really isn't, and you rub it all over the super glue. Now if you have eczema or really sensitive skin, don't recommend doing this, but if you have reasonably normal skin, then what you do is you run that on. The super glue goes all like gummy, and so you keep rubbing off the super glue until it all comes off. You grab a paper towel and just take that off, and then your fingers are mostly now not covered in super glue. And where you do have a bit of super glue left, you just rub it with that remover stuff, and it just debonds the super glue. It's called super glue debonder, funnily enough, and that is much better than trying heat or scissors or knives or chewing it off. There's another option. It does make your fingers a little bit slippy and greasy, but there's also shock oil and all sorts. Right, enough waffling. We are now at the point where we can test out this cantilever, because I'm going to pop the bolt off. I'm going to take our brand new little rod end. Now these are slightly angled, but the reason for that is that's all I had. And I'm going to put the non-angled end into the link mount, and then you just screw that on like you would your shocks on a TRX. Nothing special there. Oops, try not to put it into your hand. And then we need to find a bolt for the top that was a shortest bolt. Go for an axial SCX 2000 Jeep Cherokee. Yes, the Jeep Cherokee is a great truck, great starter truck. With the SCX-10s, with any RTR truck, even though Traxxas Canyon Trail tyres are good, all RTR tyres are generally a bit crap. So buy the truck, swap the tyres, and then just have fun. And if that means chucking a set of cheap Chinese beadlocks on just to get it to work, it'll just add weight and low down weight in the right place. Right, I am just trying to get the mounts to line up properly. So I'm just getting this bolt through the rod end and then onto the other side. Struggling a bit because I'm trying to screw it in while I'm trying to undo it at the same time. So if I can get that rod end to play properly, we should be good. And I'll be able to show you how this works on one side, and then I'm going to do the other side. Yeah, and that's that. Right, so we have a shock, we have a cantilever, we have a rod end, and so that is our cantilever kit, and that's how cantilever suspension works. So as this pushes up, that shock cycles. And what's really nice about this, what I'm feeling on this, is actually it's reasonably linear. Now this spring, as I said before, is a really stiff spring, so I'm going to loosen that off quite a bit, not too loose. Really doesn't need this brass end cap on it anymore, but you know, hey ho. Yeah, that's quite a nice kit. I'm just trying to feel the motion. That feels good. Now I actually have a feeling that I've put this on the wrong way round, so I'm going to check the pictures, and I'm thinking that this might actually supposed to be the other way round, because that leverage feels a bit weird. Where's his pictures? Ah, yes, I've got the leverage. The leverage angle is completely wrong, but that's cool because I can just put these together. So I've put this on wrong, which I thought I had, but you know, you're sticking with me and you seem to trust me, so I may as well do a good job of it. So yeah, we will pop that out and just make a few changes. No, we won't. We'll screw that up completely. So we'll unscrew the top. I mean, none of the work that we've done is thrown away, so that's good. Unscrew the bottom, and then we'll take this off. And then I'll just assess if I've done this the right way or not. Okay, yeah, that's come out. Great. Try not to lose those too much. So, if I get this right, that's actually supposed to be that way round, I think. Let me just get this right. Cantilever kit. Yeah. So what I'm going to do is just get the other side and use that instead. So I need that and that. I need a little spacer that's about the right width. Perfect. One of those. One of those. So I just need to collect up my bolts, which are these two short ones and this one long one. And let's just see how this goes together. So I've got these two plates. I've got a really long bolt that goes between the plates that runs from the side without any nodules on it, through the little spacer, through the other plate, through the spring washer, because that makes a really good shim, through the flat washer to crush it, although we only need one flat washer, and then we're going to button that up. And actually, yeah, it needed two washers, so let's just bob an extra one of those in. Just going to check how they've bolted those side members on. Oh, they have used flat screws. Okay, cool. Great, so that now goes onto there, which makes more sense because then we've got the leverage from the link a bit better. And what I'm doing is just getting that bolt a little bit through so I can capture it into the shock and then push it all the way through. So that just captures into there. Right, that just captures into there. I just need to pull off a tiny little bit of plastic, just checking the chat. So just where that's bitten in, that's just done a bit of extra plastic. That bolt that I've put in under here isn't long enough, so I'm going to use some of my much longer bolts to capture that. I'm just not comfortable with how that's going together. I'm going to just take that out and put a really long bolt across here. Yeah. I'm just dropping everything everywhere, so just be a sec. Right, these washers go in. Then I just need to swap my bit over because this bolt has more of a bolt on it. Sorry, more of a big nut on it. 1, 2, 3 washers. So, yeah, that goes in. Great. Right, so that's given me something that's moving properly that way. The initial bolt that I put in to hold the mounting plate on, I didn't do tightly enough because it needs to be almost flush. So I'm just going to make that flush now. So that's now flush. That allows the cantilever to move past it smoothly. Then we attach our link together, and then we should be able to have a little demonstration. So I'm just going to do this where I can see it to make it a bit easier for me. There we go. That's great. And then our link goes through there. And then, yeah, that actually looks a lot better. The sizing of the holes that this person's done, the holes are just a little bit undersized. So I'm just getting a few little plastic nodules sticking through that I need to deal with. Right, so there we have it. We have, that's better, isn't it? That's much flatter. We have this articulating kit. That bolt that I've put in is just a bit too long, so I'm going to have to swap that out for a shorter one, which fortunately I had a little baggie of. Yeah, I've got baggie here. Because the instructions were very, very vague on bolt lengths. Now that one's not deep enough, so I'm going to have to try and get that to capture. Right, I'll come back to that in a minute, because I might, given that this has so much leverage on it, I might on the other side put the short one on. But that's how a cantilever suspension should work. You've got a link that's linking to your cantilever part. Then you've got your shock running parallel, which means if you're running a hard body here, it shouldn't foul it, although this is coming a bit too high. So on the other side, I should be able to go a bit faster now. We'll do the other side as fast as possible. So I'm going to do this a bit more in view of the camera, hopefully. So we'll go like that. Get some beer. Just check the chat. Yeah. Right, let's go. So first things first, we want to get 3 bolts into this, get them nice and tight, get the 2 rears on, and then go from there. So while I was saying those springs I thought were super stiff, the length of the cantilever arm is so long that it's making those springs actually feel quite soft, which is fine. We can fix that. And the way that we fix that is to use the shorter cantilever arms, because a shorter lever puts less pressure on. So it looks like if I do get that servo sorted, Liam can join me tomorrow for some crawling, hopefully. So I do hope that he's either watching this live stream and not getting too upset at me saying bad things about his truck, or he's going to respond to the Facebook Messenger messages that I've sent him. Now, the first thing I've got to do is find these bolts for in here. So we are going on with the bolts. And we're going to make sure that the one at this end is nice and flush. The rest of them just need to be tight, but the one at the end needs to be quite flush, because the kit needs to be able to move around and move past it. Yeah, so that's about right for those. So put our mounting plate on. That's great. Now I'm going to check the shocks, check for the green shock, wherever it is. Just check its travel. Yeah, that just needs loosening off and letting it bleed out slightly. So I'll just do that now. And then we'll mount this shock to the end. And then we'll get our cantilever on, and then we'll fix the other side, because we're nice like that. Go on then. Right. Great, that's got as much travel as it needs for the kit. The great thing about cantilever kit, it seems, is if your shocks have got a little bit of hydro lock, it doesn't matter, because you can't achieve full travel before the rest of everything is bashing on the frame. So it probably needs like an 80mm shock rather than a 90mm shock. But I do like the fact that this kit is set up to use stock shocks. So if you've just joined, I have spent the last 100 minutes trying to work out how this kit works, and now I'm just installing the other side before going back to the first side and fixing my small mistakes. So yeah, you might be saying that's slightly too early. Right. So let's go. So we've got our super long bolt that we're going to use through the body end of the shock. That's going to go through this mount. And we're going to hope that we can get the bolt all the way through and into the cross member. So that's now tight. Our shock's hanging off. And we're going to find the short cantilever plates. We're going to get a spring washer and 2 standard washers. Three standard washers. We get my super sharp knife for cutting off any nodules. And then I'm just going to check. It should be that. So that goes on the outside, that goes on the inside. So I have one of these modules built, which I'm actually going to pull apart. So that's fine. Just trying to get that out. Right, we'll take a super long bolt. The kit recommends a 30, but I've only got 40mm. We take the super long bolt, we put it through our outside plate through the bearing. We whack our little cantilever spacer on. You can use the ones in the kit, but they're not sized to fit around. I think they're expecting some kind of metal insert. I've set this to max strength because it's starting to run out of power. I then find the right plate for the other side. I pop my spring washer on. I pop my 3 good, nice flat washers on. And then it doesn't matter about the rotation of this as long as the sides are correct. And it would help if I didn't drop it. That would really help. Do just want to check that I've put this together correctly. Yeah. So now it's a case of getting this to bolt across, and apologies for my hands in the face of the camera. And that digs into there. But the STL for the kit seems to have all the holes slightly undersized. So I will put a nut on the other side of those when I'm finished. But that gives us the shorter cantilever. Now this shorter cantilever allows us to put this shock on with a bolt. And then we can just test what this other side's like with the shorter bolt. I just want to double check which side that link goes down. Yeah, the link is towards the front of the truck, so that should be in there. So what I can do is just get this bolt to go through this casing, capture into there. That's gone a bit too far through. Right, there we go. Now, with any luck, if this will capture, will help if I set it to screw. Right, that's captured. So now that cantilever is the much shorter version feels nicer already. We're going to mount up this link, which we'll do with one of these 16mm bolts. And find the right bag. That'll be why that other one didn't fit. Right, so that goes on there. That bolt should capture through and lock on to there. Right, that's gone on. And then that little link, it's a case of getting the suspension link, that is the one that you would normally have your shocks on any normal TRX. It's getting that link, popping it through our rod end, popping it back in, making sure the bottom link is on correctly, pushing it all the way through, and then button it up at the end. Great. It's on properly. I can put my batteries away for tomorrow. And I can flip this truck over. So whoever it was who gave me that advice earlier, thank you so much. Just scrolling back through the chats. I lost it. Goya Guru. Yeah, the steering wheel centre when you turn it on. Well, there you go. That was me getting used to Castle ESCs. I have made the rookie mistake of leaving the bolt in there for the servo. So I'm going to have to capture the servo and squeeze in with my tool to try and retain the centre for that servo. Great. So it's going to be off by a spline or at the most, but won't be the worst thing in the world. It will certainly be much improved steering from where it was previously, because previously it didn't steer. So there you go. Oh, there's something I hadn't noticed. The drive shaft is missing a drive shaft pin. Hopefully I've got one of those. If I haven't, I hope it's in the box, because I certainly haven't taken that out. So I don't know how it's missing that, but you live and learn. You live and learn. Right. Make sure that servo horn is on nice and tight. Great. Drive shaft pins. There's an interesting one. Sure, I had a box with a broken drive shaft in it, which would mean a drive shaft pin somewhere. Because that crawler is not going anywhere if it's two-wheel drive, because that doesn't really work very well for crawling, despite MST making a two-wheel drive crawler. Right. This is interesting. Where have I put my drive? Ah, here they are. Drive shafts. Drive shafts and drive shaft pins. That's a Traxxas one. This guy is very lucky that I've got all these spare parts and I've managed to find them. Oh no, the drive shaft is It does have its pin, it's just not attached. That's an interesting thing. Do I find the TRX drive shafts bind up? Yes, I do. And I have a fix for that, and that's to use any aftermarket drive shaft you want that is made of metal. I use the GPM ones. They rattle, they clank, they make a lot of noise, but what they absolutely don't do is bind up and stop your suspension from working like this one will do. So yeah, buy any of them. I like the GPM ones, and I'll show you in a minute why. But first, just need to get this pin to lock in, and it's not having anything. But yeah, this TRX drive shaft is kind of doing the same thing. Now on the drive shafts, there is a little mark that allows you to put them together so that they slide together cleanly. But you can hear that actually they have that like airlock on them, and it's that airlock that's stopping them from working. And it doesn't really affect them. Like it's not going to not work. It's just going to be less than optimal, which is a phrase I use at work a lot. Right, so drive shafts. I use the GPM ones. The GPM ones have steel ends, aluminium centres. They make a lovely rattly noise all the time, but they are loose enough that they don't bind up, and that really helps. So the drive shaft's binding up. What happens is, as your suspension goes up and down, your drive shaft needs to extend. That's the whole point of having extendable drive shafts. If they don't extend, what can happen is it just causes the diff to get a bit of strain on it, or for the suspension to not cycle smoothly. If your suspension doesn't cycle smoothly, it just makes performance a little bit wobbly. Right, we've got the shocks. We took the shocks off, and we've got some long bolts for the shocks. Hey, he's got magnetic body mounts. So those magnetic body mounts have picked up the shocks. So where did I throw his shocks? There's one. On TRX shocks, you've got a thin and a thick end to the eye. I always use the thick end as the one that the bolt goes into, just so that if your shock starts slipping off, it can't pop off the ball. So having that thick end at one end just helps capture it. And that is exactly why TRXs tend to be the ones that will almost always make it out of the trail, because it's not designed for the maximum performance. It's designed to be super solid and just get you anywhere. And boy, have I done some stupid stuff to TRXs. When I was running the axe system in my RTR G500, so I replaced it with an axe system because it was just sat on the shelf. I ran a 14-tooth pinion for a laugh, which meant it was geared for over 30 miles an hour in second gear. Not taking into account drivetrain losses or the fact that the body was a big square G500. So that thing just got absolutely booted about, and quite often on the trail when you're just messing about, I would just accidentally drive it straight into a tree, and it would just take it, which was just astounding every time, because I'm pretty sure if I'd driven most crawlers into a tree at nigh on full throttle with an AX 3300 going mad, they would shatter into 1,000 pieces. Or maybe not, you know. I don't have a Vanquish. I would love one. But maybe that wouldn't. Grease on drive shaft to help it extend? No, absolutely not. What will happen is it will extend, but it's plastic for a start, so the grease won't do a huge amount for the plastic. The other thing that you'll run into is that you'll pick up dirt on the trail, and as you pick up the dirt, that will turn into a bit of like swarf, and it'll wear down your drive shaft and just turn into a paste that then stops it from moving about. Right, I'm going to set up the front end of this with the shocks straight up, straight down, but as mounted into the highest hole possible. Yes, Incision and MIP do fantastic drive shafts. I'm just cheap, I think. GPM drive shafts are, you can get probably 4 drive shafts for the cost of 1 Incision one. Right, let's have a look. So this, well, I hate to say it, this has a bent panhard mount. The reason for the bent panhard mount is the link is installed upside down. Now it's not bent enough that I would worry about it, but I am going to flip this link round so that we do get just the tiniest bit of articulation. There's a sort of offset link on the drive shaft, and it's supposed to be the other way up. Sorry, on the panhard. It's supposed to be the other way up so that it kind of tips down. This was tipping up, which meant that as the diff went up to it, it was hitting on the link. I'll just show you all in a moment. And I'm not really paying attention to the chat. Oh no, I am. Right. Right, so what I've just changed is, oh, it's not going to show too well. Let me try and get a torch or something. No, not a video. Come on. Hey. Right. That link that the torch is pointing on, that rod end was the wrong way up, and it was a right pain. Brazing ATL skid. Yes, you're right. However, coming out soon is the Just Scaling trx4 overdrive gearbox that has a custom skid, a gearbox, and 33% overdrive, and it reuses the internals from a TRX gearbox in terms of shafts, gears, and the bearings if you want to. That's coming out soon. Thought I'd get a quick plug in there. I've got one in a bag over there, and I've showed them on the live stream before, but I am looking for a name for it. So if you can think of a name for a 33% overdrive gearbox that has loads and loads of clearance, then yeah. But it is designed for flat rail trucks. It probably won't work too well on your standard TRX, because I have been far too lazy to design in upper link mounts into the skid, because I don't need them on a flat rail. But yes, the brazing one is really good. The arch on the brazing I have actually cut out before. Right, we've done the shocks on the front. They don't fully compress. You don't need them to fully compress, but both sides can mostly compress. I know that he's got the wrong servo horn in, and that reduces your clearance because it hits the panhard. Right, so there we go. We've got cantilevers. We've got a short cantilever, and we've got a long cantilever. And the long cantilever has so much leverage that it's just soft as hell. And the short cantilever has not so much leverage, but doesn't seem to have a huge amount of travel. Although actually, it's actually not too bad. Actually, that's enough travel that you'd need on a hard body, I think. So I'm not sure what to do now. Either wind up this spring. So I'll try winding up this spring, because I don't know whether he wants, because you can see that this one on here has a lot more in terms of articulation compared to this one, which doesn't have lots of articulation because it doesn't travel as far, basically. So I'm going to wind up the spring as much as I can, because this is a tedious job on any shock, especially Traxxas ones, especially ones that have lived a bit of a hard life. Right. Yeah, that feels like a bit too much leverage. That feels like the right amount of leverage. So I've wound up the spring rate adjuster on there, but there's just far too much leverage on that. Although I am going to check that there's enough oil in there, because this one feels nice and slow returning. That feels like it's returning too fast. But again, that might be the leverage. So the way to check that will be just to pop this bolt out. And just check this shock is set up correctly. Now I know I did all 4 shocks a while ago, but maybe I got one of them not tight enough. Right. So we can see that shock has a really nice, I mean, it's a really stiff spring and everything else. There's just too much in terms of leverage on that side. So I was just looking around for my stand. So what we'll do is we'll pop the other cantilever on and then just go through the whole thing again and just make sure everything's hunky-dory. Yeah, right, let's get this sorted. So I need my other piece. Just check for questions. Cool. So what we're going to do is go to the smaller of the 2 cantilevers. So that just involves taking these cantilever plates off, swapping them over for the smaller ones, which fortunately I put bearings into all of them just in case this happened. So that's the plate. So bolt through the faceplate, spacer on, second faceplate, spring washer, 2 normal washers, and then there's a washer that's kind of stuck to this. The shocks, I'm going to wind off the preload springs. And yeah, I'm just going to bolt this in now. Right, and then we need 2 16mm bolts. I'll just turn this back round. 2 16mm bolts, and I'll just loosen off this shock now that we know it doesn't need to be so tight. But there's all kinds of gunge and grit and stuff on these shocks that I should have cleaned off before I wanted to adjust them. But never mind, I'm going to loosen off this one as well. Great, so just a reminder, we take our bolt, pass it through the first hole, capture the shock, then line up the rear plate, bolt it together, and then do the same for the link. Although I might be able to just line it up and go. There we go, right, that's lining up. Swap these over, don't do it too tight. Maybe a little bit tighter there. Right, That's that. That's the link. Bring the link up, get the bolt through, tighten it up, and then test. Test, test, test. Right, we now have cantilever kit on the back. That is, yeah, that's not binding, but it runs out of leverage quite quickly. What I'm going to do is just get this receiver box together before I forget, and I've just got to sort out the gasket because I let that get caught up in the wires. So let me sort this receiver box gasket out and put that together. What I'm going to do is level this off on the worktop to just make sure that everything is all leveled in, because you want your suspension to be reasonably level. Now I think he's going to run a battery just somewhere. I don't know how he's going to do that. I don't have the body, so I can't work that out. But this is going to be an interesting crawler because it's going to have not a lot of travel. And not a lot of travel means it's going to climb like an absolute beast. Because without a lot of travel, the chassis can't lift up and screw the centre of gravity, so it will stay low. But that said, without a lot of travel, it's going to be scraping its belly over things, and it ain't a belly dragger because it's a trx4. Right, where are we at? So let's have a look. Right, so we're going to, this is how I tend to level things off. I pop them on the workbench and then I just look at them. So the front suspension is the panhard bars fouling on the servo horn because it's the wrong style of servo horn. I wonder if I can be generous and find one of my spares. There we go. I've got a spare GPM one. Good old GPM. Let's sort out this servo horn. Now, this is always fun to do on the trail, servo horns, and I'm going to need my MIP bit because the servo horn's a bit chewed up. So all I'm doing now is just taking the servo horn off. The reason why the servo horn is so important on a TRX is because the servo horn sits across the panhard bar, and if you get that messed up, then you can't really steer or do anything because the whole thing's resting on the servo horn. But fortunately I have a spare one. It does mean I've got to undo a few things. So I'm just going to, instead of messing around with the suspension and everything else, I'm going to undo the front links at the chassis end. Pop those out, which should allow me to wiggle this enough that I might have to undo the panhard again and just work out what he's done, because it just feels wrong. Put that to one side, then hopefully I can get in. But no, I need to undo the drive shaft, which is covered in grease. This really has been done by someone who is totally fearful of getting anything wet. Sometimes it's better to not grease stuff and just replace it when it goes a little bit rusty than it is to cover it in the amounts of grease that I've seen people put on trucks. Right, servo horns. So that is your standard axial style servo horn. Not a problem on an axial because of where the servo sits. Your TRX style, what you can probably see is it's lower on the arm. And that extra clearance on the arm is what stops your panhard from getting knocked about when you're trying to steer. Get yourselves a proper Traxxas servo arm. And if it's a GPM one, it'll last you practically forever. If it's another manufacturer, your mileage may vary. Right, so I'm just putting this servo on I was going to say properly, but a bit haphazardly and a bit badly. I will get there. The GPM ones as well, they have this clamp that just seems to clamp so stupidly tight that they never come loose, even if you use a Holmes Hobby servo or Three Brothers or any of the major ones. Right. That is on. So now that's on, I can put the panhard back on. And hopefully the extra few mil that we've just cleared will be what allows us to just basically do anything. Steer, mostly. Right, great. So it's going to get these links back on. I don't know what to do with his diff lock cable. What I should do is steal it, because I need one and he can't use his because he's not got the servo in there. But I will just tuck it out the way in a bit. And when I say steal it, I mean take it as payment for spending over 2 hours fixing his truck for him. I'm going to pop the drive shaft together before I put the link on, because it just makes it easier. Because as we discussed, these drive shafts are not the easiest to put together. Your drive shaft pins, don't do them too tight, but you know, make sure there's a bit of Loctite on there to make sure that they stay on. And hopefully, when I get this link in, right, what we should have now is a little bit more up travel. Yeah, so we've got nearly all of our travel upwards. We've got full side to side travel, so that's great. And that's because we're using custom mounts that have raised the position of the suspension point, so we don't want that to be too high. This truck's actually got a nice forward lean on it. It's ever so subtle, which will help it when it's climbing as well. That rear suspension is very stiff, so I just want to look at flipping those rear mounts over to just give it a little bit extra. I don't know, actually it's, yeah, without that extra leverage, Yeah, so what I'm going to do is flip those around to a run video. Yes. Yes, well, if Liam turns up tomorrow, whose truck this is not my truck. I promised to live stream him driving this truck. So what I'm just doing now is these little mounts where your shock mounts to, these were mounted, so this part was at the back end. I'm pointing at the other end just to give myself a little bit more travel, or give the truck a little bit more travel. Yeah, next time he drops this truck over for me to fix it, I will ask him for the transmitter so that I can do testing. Right, that is much better. It's only the tiniest little change, but it just changes how the cantilever is interacting. Turn that other phone off because I will forget to turn this off and I'll need power on it at some point. Now, I'm not some kind of person that can afford to have multiple phones. It's just the company I work for has a mobile phone division, and we don't have to return them as part of the upgrade process for a staff member. So when I smashed my phone and decided to upgrade, I didn't have to rush out and get a screen replacement and sort all of that out. I just kept the phone. Right, that is pretty much sat level. So it's only a short amount of suspension on the rear, but it is suspension, and it does have articulation. So the articulation is tiny, but it is there. So it does move a little bit. It's very much like a leafer, but the thing is, the other arms were so long that the suspension just didn't have any kind of resistance. It would have needed a very, very stiff spring. So that's, I mean, that's good. I can't really run a shorter link because that would change it. That link is pushing all the way, so that's about the maximum articulation. It's minimal at best, but that's what cantilever kits are like. So yeah, it's gonna be an interesting driving truck. It does have a very heavy body on that's going to be sat on it, so I think it does need to be quite stiff the way that it is. The front again has really thick oil on, so it compresses nicely. It doesn't feel like a lot of suspension, but actually when I'm looking at it, it's not too bad. Best thing to do when I don't know is to measure. So it is 80mm off the ground fully extended, and it is 63mm off the ground fully compressed. Oh, well, not even fully compressed, because I can compress that even further. So let's have a look. How far can we compress that? Yeah, down to about 62mm. So there's about 18mm of travel there, which I think feels good, and it resists body roll. It's a cantilever, so it's nice and strong. That is the cantilever set installed. I'm now going to put the front bumper back on somehow, put some wheels back on, finish the stream off, and then check my messenger to see if we'll get some running videos of this tomorrow. Yeah, but I'm going to assume that kind of fits on something like that. You know what, I'll just take those bolts out completely and pop it together. Right. It really doesn't want to play ball. There we go, that's one. Just check my messages. Right, and that's the other. There we go. So we have a truck. Oh, the last screw won't go in. Let me just get that sorted. There we go. Right. We've got the truck together. We have the truck together. Thank you if you've watched the whole thing. Now I'm going to chuck this on the work stand and put the wheels on. I'm just going to push this cantilever kit out the way because there's just stuff everywhere. While I had it on the bench, I was like flexing it, and it didn't look like it had a lot of flex, but it did just dawn on me that actually you need the wheels on, because once the wheels are on and you've got the full width, you've got extended hexes on this truck, and you've got wheels that look like they've got a bit of an offset on them as well, the track width increases. So when you've got a small track width and you're moving it side to side, it doesn't look like much, but when you make it wider, it moves the same amount, but it feels much bigger. Which is why on my other TRX, my TRX, I'll show you in a second. These tyres are lovely as well. They're scale Proline tyres that feel really good. But on the truck that I'm going to be driving tomorrow, I've put comically wide spacers on it. Not because I want to run a TRX this way. This will go back to standard offset wheels to be a bit more comp-like. But I wanted to see what Capra width axles were like, in case somehow I had the money that I was allowed to spend, and I can go off and get some Capra axles. Or if there's anyone that wants to send me a Capra to see some crazy comp builds, then please feel free. But I'm sure there'll be lots of people laughing about that right now. Oh, there's cables all in the wrong places on this truck, but it's been a lot of work, and we've corrected the major things. We've now got everything has a bolt in it. That's a good start. That makes me sound really sarcastic, but not everything had a bolt in it that definitely needed a bolt in it. The servo cross member is now the right way round, and at the start of the stream we showed how to do that properly. The shocks are now matched properly because all of the shocks are the same rate at the front and at the back. We've bled all the shocks, as you saw, and so all the shocks are now operating nice and smoothly. We've used the Team Wazzy, I'm not sponsored, but I'd love to be, but because it's got a certain colour to it, I know which one it is. The 40 weight, and that's weight, not CST. And then we've installed this cantilever kit, which I said I was going to put a bolt on these a nut on these bolts, but I don't think it needs it. So very long wheelbase truck. So now let's take a look at how it's flexing, because now it's got some wheels on. We can see that it's got the side-to-side flex that it needs in terms of the panhard and everything else. So that is enough to get over most stuff. It's not a huge amount of articulation, but the Land Cruisers don't have a huge amount of articulation. What we can see is the body is tipped slightly forwards. And yes, I know the camera's wonky, so I'll straighten the camera up. But the chassis has a slight forward lean on it. That's fine. That's just how I've built it. If he wants to change it, he can change these two shocks and move them down to the standard position. I've just put them on the lower one because it will make it climb better at the loss of some ride height. Beer. Right. The rear has the cantilever kit on that we can see. And now we can have a look and see how much does that actually articulate. So not a huge amount, but it is something. Like it is a working suspension rather than what it had, which was no suspension. In terms of overall articulation, we'll do the standard test of lift it up until the rear wheel lifts off the ground. So that's the standard test, and that looks to me like it's got, yeah, it's got about 3 inches of articulation when it's done that way. When it's done on the back, it's about 3.5 inches of articulation. So even with the big wheels, that's going to be pretty scale for, say, a stock, whatever this is. I've forgotten, a stock LC70, I think, is the body going on this. So it's going to be a very scale truck. It'll look like it's running on leaves, but it's actually got a cantilever on the back. I would have liked to have got a lot more articulation out of this, but the springs just aren't strong enough. What I will do is give Liam the leftover pieces so that he can choose to install the longer arms and strengthen up the springs, because now it should be easier for him to work it out. Although I have just lost one of the plates. There we go. Got the other plate, so I can give those to him. But let's have a look. Oh yeah, it would look like it would be a cool flatbed truck. Yeah. Yeah, I think he's got the pickup body for it. But yeah, an LC70 with a flatbed, make it look like a sort of telecoms truck or something. That would be awesome. That's a really good shout. So I'm just going to chuck the last of his bits and bobs away. Don't think he needs the cross member across here, but I might just pop it on because it will just help. The rear one, he doesn't have the cross member, or it's probably at home. We'll come to that problem when we get to it. So I'm going to throw the spares into here now. Spare bearings. I've lost the rest of the bearings, but he's got a couple of spares in there in his little Ferrero Rocher box. I've lost the lid to it. I'll find that later. There we go. I'll give him some spare rear mounts. I'll throw these stupid spacers away because there's no reason to print those. Just don't bother with them. Just get yourself some nylon spacers, like, you know, just a big load of those. So yeah, that is a trx4 cantilever with the short version on, because I couldn't be bothered to wind these off because I would have had to clean the shock down. I'm going to recommend to him that he just tries it out this way because it has enough suspension to do things, and I think, yeah, that's got enough suspension to climb and cope with the transmission of power to give you grip, because one part of suspension is to give you grip, the other is to actually get you over stuff. I think this thing is going to climb like it shouldn't really be able to climb because of how it is. What time is it? Yeah. Ooh. That's the stand that this is on. That's it. It's time for me to put my truck in the car, put my batteries in the car, so I'm ready to go in the morning. I'm going to go out and have fun tomorrow, and thank you for watching. It's been a lot of fun. This thing, we will try and get some footage for people to have a look at. But otherwise, hopefully that's been a load of stuff that helps people out. Have a great weekend, and I'll catch you next time.